Welcome to the Monday Motivation Spotlight. I'm Lesley Kaplan, welcoming you, mine is partially a voice, but we'll be just fine, to another episode where we spotlight an amazing individual making a difference in Israel. Thank you, as always, to our sponsors, Eggert & Cohn Insurance, and to Lali's Flower Boutique in Jerusalem. So who is our special guest today? She's the one and only Rifka Lebowitz, who many of you are familiar with. Rifka, we move in similar circles. She made Aliyah at age 12 from Glasgow, Scotland. Yes, she's got that beautiful Scottish accent combined with a few other things, as you'll hear her mention later. She's the founder of Living Financially Smarter in Israel. She has a Facebook group with over 40,000 members. She's a certified financial planner. She's also the author of Smarter Israeli Banking, and she's a member of Israel's Financial Planning Association and the Israel Union of Home Economic Advisors. She guides people, she assists them, she helps them make smarter financial decisions, a profession which is very much needed. So Rifka, welcome to our Monday Motivation Spotlight. I'm delighted to have you here. We've known each other for a good couple of years. We move in similar circles. I love your Scottish accent. As I said before, you made Aliyah from Scotland, from Glasgow at the age of 12. So let's start with how it all happened. Growing up as a child in Scotland, were you aware of Israel? Did your parents talk about it? What got them to make Aliyah? And also you landing here at the right age of 12 is not an easy age to make Aliyah. Did you have Hebrew or you had to learn from scratch?
First of all, hi, thank you so much for having me. Yes, so I made Aliyah from Scotland, as we said. The truth is I've mostly lost my accent. When I first made Aliyah, I didn't know any Hebrew. You know, maybe shalom, bye, the real basics from the Jewish day school in Scotland. There's only one Jewish school in Scotland. So growing up, that was the school I went to, and we learned very, very basic Hebrew. So when I made Aliyah, I did not know much Hebrew. I got made fun of. My accent got made fun of. And I just switched my accent to sound a little more British, a little more American, but definitely not as Scottish as I used to. Growing up in Scotland was really lovely. It was a great place to grow up. I knew that Israel was a place that my family was planning on coming to. I knew people that made Aliyah. The school was very Zionistic. My mom was very Zionistic, and we just always knew that we were going to be moving to Israel. A few years before we moved, my grandparents moved. So I had them here. I had first cousins here. It was sort of an obvious move, and I sort of always knew that my parents didn't want me to go to the non-Jewish high school. There was no Jewish high school. So there was sort of that looming deadline of when I finished the Jewish elementary day school that we would be coming to Israel. And we came then. Not an easy age to come, but we can succeed even if we come at a difficult age. And that's, that's my Aliyah story.
Right, right. Well, I must tell you, when I first met you, I wasn't quite sure where the accent was from, but I do remember loving your accent. And yeah, maybe not so strong Scottish right now. Like, I don't think I've got such a strong South African accent, but when people meet me, they can still tell where I'm from. But anyway, it's all to your benefit. We love the accent, so don't try and get rid of it. I think it's just part of who you are. All
Thank you.
righty, so let's move into. So, yes, you started here at age 12. You grew up here in Israel. You became obviously fluent in the language. Let's move into Rivka as a young child growing up. Did you always know that you were interested in things like numbers, financial planning, or at what stage did you become interested in that?
So when I came in Aliyah, I really struggled in school. It was very challenging. I'm not very great. I'm not very good at language. I'm very good with numbers and not language, which maybe is what pushed me into doing this. So it was hard for me to learn Hebrew. It took me many years. I did do it. I did Bagliyot, finished high school, etc. And towards the end of high school, when all my friends were discussing, what we're going to do, what's everyone going to do. I said I want to help people with their money. I don't know why. I just had this very deep want to help people with their money. I saw that there was a need for people to have, whether they're olim and there's a new financial system they need to get used to, or just understand money. I understood that people that are knowledgeable with money are going to do better. And I wanted to help people with that, but that wasn't a profession yet. So
Right.
I applied to learn accounting. Thankfully, I didn't go learn accounting. And then I decided I'm going to learn investments, which fascinated me. I was one of these people that waited till my 18th birthday to actually start investing. And when I give talks now, I'm talking to, I'm doing a series of talks now to 21 to 28-year-olds. And I'm like, I waited till my 18th birthday. And they're all like, what? Like, who even knew about investing? But I knew I was interested in it. So I went to learn investing, did all the licensing exams in Israel, and worked in a boutique investment firm to start with. But while I was there, I knew that that wasn't ultimately where I wanted to be. I wanted to be helping people with their money, and investing is wonderful and it's definitely part of helping people. But I wanted to help them make smart overall decisions. And I saw people, who had money, who had accounts at the investment firm, who were stressed out. And I was like, 1 minute, they have all this money. Why are they still stressed? Like, why isn't this helping them reduce their stress, even financial stress they would have? So I was like, there's got to be something else out there. There's got to be something I should be doing that isn't quite this. And then I left the investment firm. I joined a bank. I was an investment advisor at a branch of a bank. But even there, I just kept having this feeling there's something else I should be doing.
Right, right. So you're saying you're involved in the more personal side of the money. In the banking, yes, I mean, there is a personal side. You kind of get to know some people more than others, the banker, but there it's more just dealing with the money. Here, you're actually involved with people and more on the people side. And I think that that adds to your vision and your mission because you really know the people behind the scenes that you're helping them.
I remember when I was at the bank, I helped a 13-year-old who came in right after his bar mitzvah with money. He'd made some money from his bar mitzvah from the gifts and he brought it into the bank and he wanted to invest. And I was so excited about this. Like, look at this. Here's a kid, like I wanted to invest at 18. Here's a kid wanting to invest at 13. That's incredible. And I sat with him and I was super excited and got him to, invest. And the bank was really mad at me, really mad. Like, what have you done? Why did you waste an hour of your time with a 13-year-old with small amounts of money? You should be spending your time with a millionaire or whatever. And I was like, but I wanted to help him. And that was really like there was a lot of conflicts like that while I was at the bank, because at the end of the day, the bank is a business, the bank are there to sell you things. We might not look at it like a supermarket, but ultimately the bank is in some way a supermarket. And they're there to sell you things. And we had these things where we had to sell the savings plans. And I was like, but it's not a good savings plan for this person. But the bank wanted to sell them. So I never won any of these things where we had to like sell the most. I was like, no, but it didn't suit the person. I really, really wanted to work with the person. I saw the same type of thing when I was at the investment firm, and people would be pulling out money randomly, like, oh, suddenly I need this, and this has gone wrong, and that's happening. And I was like, well, why isn't this planned? Like, most things in life are not a surprise. I always mention that in my talks. People are like, well, my budget would work, but it didn't work because there was a surprise. And I'm like, most things are really not a surprise. Timing might be a surprise, but most things are not a surprise. That could be when our refrigerator goes or when our computer goes. They're not necessarily surprised. It's just a surprise it went now. So it was the same in the investment firm. Like, I just saw people pulling money and changing things and be miserable even though they had the money, and I saw it in the bank, and I was just like, someone needs to help people sort out their full financial picture and be on the person side. There's got to be that. And it wasn't a profession even then, though it started around 16, 17, 18 years ago, maybe. They opened the Union of Home Economy Advisors in Israel. And that's helping people with their personal finance. And when I saw that opened, I was like, wow, that's what I want to be doing. That's where it's at. And as you know, I left the bank, which was very challenging for me. Took my letter of resignation in day after day and wouldn't
Right. We're going
hand
to
it
talk
in.
about that in just a moment, actually,
Sure.
because I know a little bit behind the scenes, which I'd like you to share with everyone. It's funny that you talk, and we'll talk about this leading and moving forward, what you were going to say. But, when you talked and you mentioned the example of the bar mitzvah boy, so it's so funny that you mentioned that because that's exactly what I wanted to ask you and say. is that I remember, and I'm sure things have changed now with the banks. You can tell me if they have or haven't. But when my sons turned bar mitzvah age and I wanted to open up a bank account for them, not all the banks would even let a 13-year-old boy or child open up an account. It had to be 16. I'm not sure what it is now. Maybe you can share that with us. But I was just thinking at the time, like that's such a short-term, decision. It's not looking at the big picture and a small picture decision, because these kids that open up an account at age 13 or whatever age, that they want to open up an account, they're going to likely stay with that bank for the rest of their lives. So they're not looking at the big picture. And yes, my kids that did open up accounts that were allowed to open up. And I remember at the time, I don't want to mention bank names, but I remember one bank allowed them to, and another one didn't. And they've stayed with that bank through adults, through making their money that they have. And it was really looking at the small picture. Has the law changed now? From what age can you officially open up an account?
So the law has changed. It's now 14 with a parent. But really, because so many children get money, even if it's not huge amounts, but so many kids get money at their bar or bat mitzvah, I would love it to change to be 12 or 13 and
I
let them
agree.
take whatever they get, even if it's 2,000 shekel from a bar bat mitzvah, if they get money, and invest it and get started young, because it's good habits for life. So I wish that was the case. Unfortunately, it isn't. It's 14, but that's better than 16.
Right, right. No, absolutely. And it's just teaching them from the right age to be, responsible, manage their money well, not keep it at home under their pillow, whatever they're going to do. Well, you know what? I'm going to put you to the challenge, my friend Rifka, is that maybe you can take it to the Knesset and just remind everyone that you heard it here on the Monday Motivation Spotlight, that you can maybe go to the Knesset or Bank Yisrael, whatever it is, and lobby to have accounts being able to be opened at Bar or Bat Mitzvah age. How does that sound?
You got it. I have someone who's always there who will do this. I put different laws. I wanted to change a law about the canceling credit cards, because it was very difficult to cancel credit cards, or almost impossible to cancel credit cards online. And that came into effect, not because I had pushed for it, but it came into effect even though I had pushed for it. And I'm actually going to do that after our session today. I'm going to ask him what he thinks about this and see if we could push it through.
Amazing. Wow. Now, I'd love to hear if something comes of it, because even though my kids are much older now, my grandchildren are that age. And just for Israel, for kids, it's teaching a responsible Israel and building a thriving Israel that kids can learn not to just spend their money, but actually to save it and invest it or whatever they choose to do. And then, of course, they'll need someone like you to help them save it or invest it wisely, somebody that's on their side.
It's interesting that you bring up that idea now, because Israel has announced that all children will get some financial education starting from next school year. So it's perfect that they should be allowed to have bank accounts already, because they're going to be learning more about money. When people are clueless about money or haven't learned anything about it, they're like, okay, so I'll sit under my pillow or wherever it is. But now that they're going to be learning about it, it's even more important for them to have bank accounts and for them to start investing and start knowing about that whole world of finance and money in an appropriate way, obviously, for a 12-year-old, but I'm definitely going to push for it. Thanks for the idea.
Okay, amazing, amazing. And especially in certain economic circles, we have kids in all different at all different levels, and adults at all different levels. So I think this can also especially help the kids in maybe lower socioeconomic levels, where their parents are maybe not pushing them or of the mindset to do that kind of thing. Because parents that are already in a different level, or maybe they more have the mindset to encourage their kids to do that, but not every level is able to do that.
I think also that parents don't love talking to their kids about money. You'll find so many people from all different backgrounds, who tell me that their parents never discussed money with them. When they had a lot of money, the parents, they didn't want to discuss it because they thought, oh, the kids are going to think this or that, or ask for money, and when they don't have money, like there's a lot of embarrassment about money and about people's situation, even if they, make money and have money. And I find a lot that parents just don't talk to their kids about it. And there's a generation now of people super interested, the teens and the young 20s, they're all super interested. I didn't see this 10 and 15 years ago. I'm seeing it now that everyone's waking up to this like 1 minute. I want to learn finance. I want to know what this is. We see more people going into the field of personal finance, which I said did not exist when I was that age. We're seeing a lot more interest in this whole field of finance, particularly from the youngsters. Many of them are way more savvy than their parents, interestingly.
Right, that's interesting. That's very interesting. And that's likely going to happen, with a lot of things, not just with money, but with the internet, with social media, with AI, that the adults are going to be learning from the kids. So I want to go back one part in your chapter before you went out on your own. And I had a little bit of inside information. As I said, I'm going to hold up. Rifka was featured in my book, Power Talks with Women Entrepreneurs, where I took a bunch of women that were making a difference in Israel. And you can see Rivka's here on where my finger is. Here we go on the side. Chapter 5 was devoted to Rivka. So I know the reason that you left the bank, but why don't you share with our viewers and our listeners the reason that you decided to leave the bank? Besides, yes, you mentioned about you wanted to be on the client side and not representing the bank, but there was more to it. And then we're going to move in to your amazing Facebook group, to what you're doing now.
So one of the reasons I left the bank was that I trained someone. I don't know if this is the reason I put in the book, actually. I don't remember, but because there were a couple of reasons. But one of the reasons was I trained someone to be an investment advisor. They have to do an internship, or like a stage. And I trained him, and he was from the same Hasidic sect as my boss at the bank. And one day I was told that he's going to be the guy I trained, who's like 8 years behind me. He's going to be my boss. And when I went to the boss and said, why is this happening? The boss said, well, you're a woman, so you probably just want to be in the kitchen and cooking. And I was like,
Which
what?
is like abhorrent. Now, if somebody had to say that, there would be such a to-do about it. But how
Oh,
many years ago was this that happened?
17 years ago, it happened,
Right.
17 and a half. And I was so shocked, and I don't think I shared this either, maybe I did. I pulled on my necklace. I don't know why. I just like naturally pulled on my necklace, which had a lot of beads. So all the beads are flying everywhere. Okay. And the bank boss is in the bank manager's office. And I'm the last person to want to cook. As it happens, I'm not the cook. My husband does all our cooking at home. So like just the comment was so out of place in 2008 or 9 or whatever it was, and telling me that. And I was like, okay, this is the sign. Like, I do not belong here. And I actually went to a lawyer to discuss, this is not
Right. I
okay.
was going to
It's
say
not
you
how
could
it
have
works.
actually taken it further if you had wanted to. Even if they had reinstated you or put you in that position, you wouldn't have felt comfortable. But what did the lawyer say to you? Just
So
out
the
of
lawyer
interest.
told me I was right and I will win. But the lawyer also said that the banks have very, very deep pockets. He said, there's nobody in the bank taking this lawsuit personally. They are going to drag it out for years, and you
Right.
are going to take it personally. He said, I'll take it on. I'll do it. You'll make money. I'll make money. But he said, it's going to ruin 5 years of your life. Are you willing to do that? And I said, no. I just wasn't willing to do that. I want to live a good life. I feel like it maybe was the push that I needed to actually leave the bank and let them be. I'm going to go out and do my own thing.
And the rest was history. And you know what? I think that was a wise decision, what the bank said. And some people would do it just for saying, like, I've got to do it. But I know someone who sued Kupat Cholim, and that's exactly what they did. They dragged it out over at least 5 years. And I totally get it. And you were able to move forward. And think about it, when things like this happen at the time, you think, oh, what's going to be? That's my security. So let's take us into the next chapter of your life. That's when you went out on your own, correct?
That is when I went out on my own. I was petrified. And anyone listening to this who has a full-time job and the security, because you must understand, banks are so secure. Like the bank isn't going bankrupt. The bank just makes more and more money. And people think that they're going to be there from now until they retire. There's such a feeling of security. And all of us ultimately want financial security. So that lack of security, that leaving the bank, I was petrified. And as I said, I took in my resignation letter day after day, and I just couldn't hand it in because I was scared. But I also knew I needed to do it. I knew I wanted to do it. I knew this was my next path, but what if I didn't succeed? And your mind plays games on you. Okay, well, if you don't succeed, what's going to be? And you'll never be able to go back to a bank again. And I waited actually at the bank until I got tenure, so I couldn't be fired. So it really was, if I needed to go back to a bank, that I'd be able to say, look, I got tenure. Like, it's not like they fired me. But yes, so I was petrified, but I did it. I took that big step and I went out on my own, and I did something that nobody understood at the time. I was like, I'll help people with their finances. I'll help them make financial decisions. And people were like, what's that? Like, oh, so could you go back to the bank if you need to? Like, a lot of people did not have faith that this was going to succeed. But thankfully, there were a lot of people who needed the guidance, who needed the advice. And over time, I have built a business, and there really were very, very few people who were doing that at the time. And I've really built a business by helping people with their finances. And I've made lots of changes to my business, learned lots of things which we can discuss along the way. But getting started was scary, but thankfully there were people that needed the advice.
Right, listen, I totally understand because I mean, I did the same thing. I resigned from a job in order to start my business, and this is now almost coming up to 30 years ago. And
Wow.
I see with a lot of the clients that I work with too, many of them are new in business, some are more experienced, but at some stage it was having to let go of what they thought was that secure job. And actually, if you think about it, it's actually the opposite. Yes, on the one hand, and being an independent business owner, as we know, is not for everybody in terms of the discipline, the hours, the family setup, whatever it is. However, I often say, people think being employed is being secure. And yes, on the one hand, certainly with the bank, it is a secure thing. But as an independent business owner, it doesn't matter what your profession is, I'm sure you'll agree with me, is that really we have the opportunities and the impetus to take it in any direction we want and to make the most of it. And in some ways, it can be more secure if you're disciplined. Yes, we don't have that permanent uh, check coming in. Like when you're an employee. But on the other hand, tomorrow, any companies, and we see with retrenchment, can say to you, sorry, we're downsizing. And then, where's that secure job? So that's the one thing that, in terms of the mindset, in some ways, even though it sounds strange, being an independent business owner can be more secure. Tell us a little bit about it with clients that you work with, the different way that you would help them, coach and structure them if they're employees versus if they're independents, because I'm sure that you have a bit of both.
Yeah, I'll just go back to your previous comment about the security. So
Yeah.
before I left the bank, I read a book about being independent, and that was one of the things they said. They said, when you work for a bank or wherever it is, you have one employer, they decide to fire you, all your income is gone. I work with tens, hundreds, thousands of people over the years. If one person decides to fire me or decides not to work with me, he's not really firing, decides not to work with me anymore, there's still so much else. There's still so much, so many other things
Right. Your
going
eggs
on.
aren't all in one basket. That's how we can say
Exactly.
it.
So
Mhm.
once you've built up, you reduce your risk definitely on that aspect. But yes, it's scary to get out there and to do it. And I understand people who are scared, but there's a whole big world out there if you're doing the right thing for you. And just like you've grown your business, I've grown mine. We know so many other people that have grown their business. It's doable. So regarding working with clients, so it really depends. Like people will come to me for anything from, like, we're a young couple, we want to buy our first apartment in Israel. And as we all know, buying first properties in Israel can be challenging to say the least, due to the high prices in Israel. Like, how do we put this together? To people coming with, we had an exit from a company, or we inherited money and we have this whole plan, and how do we make a plan, put things together, help our kids do what we want to do, live the lifestyle we can now dream, we could only dream of until now. So I'm dealing with finances on a lot of different levels. When people are employed or self-employed, generally when they're employed, they feel that sense of security. I know what's coming in. And so we're dealing with it in one way of like, okay, this is fixed income basically, and this is what we're dealing with. And when we're dealing with people who are self-employed, they'll very often tell me, well, it's hard to work with me because we don't know what my income is. And I'm always like, that's fine. So let's treat you as if you're an employee of yourself. make all your business money go into one bank account, take a set salary every single month. You have a low month, you have a high month, it doesn't matter. You'll have enough in that account to take salary for yourself. So you reduce the unknown, because the unknown really drives people financially crazy. It makes people feel very insecure. Like, well, I've had a great month. Well, I've had a terrible month. Like, no, let's just neutralize all of that, put it in an account, average it out, and take a salary. So we are dealing with people differently. Also, when people are self-employed, if they're not making enough, for example, then we can work on ways to up their income, much easier, because it's in their control and in their hands than if they're employed. So there's a lot more to do actually with people who have their own business. They'll max out their Carney-Stone, they'll max out their pensions, they'll do their own things. And the sky's the limit. They could really make a lot more money if they plan correctly.
Right, right. And it's planning correctly, but also spending habits. So can you share with us some of the mistakes maybe people make? Because as we know, being profitable and being financially stable and being financially smart, and I do want to ask you about the Facebook group, which we'll go over to in a moment, is not only about our income, but also about managing our expenses. Would you like to say something about that, about the expenses, and maybe some mistakes that you've seen people made, and give us some
Sure.
tips moving forward?
So a few months ago, I took a course on financial therapy. Okay, it was like the cream of the top of all the different things I've done over the years, which, the investments and the personal finance and the CFP that I did, Certified Financial Planner course. And it really brought something together, because I'll see this, you tell people, oh, these are the mistakes they'll make, and they'll still make the mistakes. So the financial therapy course really brought in something that I knew, but learned in much more depth, of how so much of our behavior with anything, but also with money, is determined by various things that we thought when we grow up, that we took upon ourselves, that we saw with our parents, that we learned from. They're basic things that are happening that sort of are subconscious. And very often when it comes to spending, and I'm going to talk about extreme cases, but they're an example where the issue is the spending. But I can't just say, oh, this is where people make mistakes and then they'll go fix it. We have to understand our financial personality and what stands behind things. Like I have had clients over the years, and I'll give one example, who had millions, tens of millions, okay, like really wealthy, okay, and they were spending tremendous sums of money. But when the wife, okay, it was a guy who had this business, and his wife wanted to buy a dress, there was no money for it. So what is that? Is that a spending wrong? They're spending tremendous amounts of money. I've had clients that spend 250,000 shekel a month. That's a tremendous amount, you will agree, I'm sure, per month. And you're like, where's all that money going? But what it's coming from, they weren't earning that. So, it's not like, oh, they're earning it, so it's fine. What it was coming from was an internal place, some need to spend, to share, to treat other people based on their financial personality. So really, when we're looking at like what mistakes people make, I would say not understanding their financial personality, not having awareness, meaning I've seen people, they have great business income, but they're spending it all on various things to upkeep the business, but they're not taking money home. Well, what's the point on the business, right? It's to support you normally. So you'll see these things, and a lot of them are lack of awareness and lack of awareness of your financial personality, and therefore being able to take the steps that are needed. I'll go for a different extreme example where someone can't spend any money. I gave someone homework recently to spend money on themselves. That was her homework. And I checked in. I don't know if she's done it or not, but that was her homework, because she actually couldn't spend money on herself. And she never used to have money, so she held herself tight. But now when you have money, you need to actually know how to spend it. So we have all the different extremes there, with like spending, overspending, not overspending, not being able to spend. And it all comes down to financial awareness and to personality type.
Right, that's fascinating. I think a course like financial therapy is so, so important, because you're right, we all have a money story behind us from our childhood growing up, adulthood, seeing parents flush or seeing parents struggle, and that totally impacts our views and the way we look at things. So tell us a little bit, for those of you, most of you know that Rifka runs the amazing Facebook group called Living Financially Smarter in Israel with 40,000 whopping members. I happen to be one of those 40,000 members, and there's great stuff being said on the group. Tell us what got you to start the group, how far along after you had started your business did you start the group, and anything that you'd like to share about that.
Sure. So not long after I started the business, like a couple of years after I started the business, I think, I don't remember the exact years, I went to a marketing talk and someone suggested opening a Facebook group. I think it was Dov Gordon, if you know who he is. And he suggested opening a Facebook group. And I thought, okay, I'll open a Facebook group. My mom will join. I don't know, someone will join. And I remember getting to those first 100 members and being like, whoa, 100 people are here. And my consistent advice throughout the years is really why I think it grew. I didn't advertise myself to the point that people are always asking, does anyone know a financial advisor? You know, I don't advertise myself. I don't let anyone else advertise. I'm very strict that the group is there just to help people. In more recent years, I've advertised my events because it helps people. You know, we do an annual conference. I'm doing a women's event coming up in February. So I'll mention events, but I don't allow advertising. So it doesn't feel scammy. It doesn't feel like everyone's out to get you. People are just there building a community, talking, helping. When you have a financial question and you didn't know where to ask it, this is the space. And that's what's really made the group grow. People are helpful. People, sometimes it's New Olim, sometimes it's Old Olim. It's not necessarily only New Olim. But people just don't know things. Like, I got this. What does it mean? How does this help? I opened a bank account and they're asking me this. Like, the questions are all over. Also, how do we convert money from dollars to shekels? That comes up a lot. How much money do we give at a wedding? That's always a hot topic. You know, what? We need to give money at a wedding? Why is that Israeli? How do we need to take that on? Can we give presents? Like, the whole conversation always blows up when someone asks that. But the idea is that there's a lot of information there. People tell me all the time, like, I've been watching your group and I love it. I learned so much from it. And I'll hear that all the time. And it's really because it's been very, very focused on we're just here to help. And that's what we're there to do. And Danny Newman, an insurance agent, and Benjamin Radomski, who's an accountant, they both help, and they're due the credit for also helping building up.
For all, exactly. Firstly, one person on their own cannot manage a group this size, but they're both amazing people. So hello to Danny and Benjamin, if you're listening to this, both amazing people, and each one comes with their expertise. So before we end, actually, I wasn't going to ask you this, but this will be the second last question, let me say. But Sid, you mentioned something now about weddings. I know it's always a controversial thing when you go to a wedding. In the past, you used to give a gift. Now people expect and request money. And I know many people, and I've had this conversation with many people, I think I saw it maybe in your group or another group. What is your take on it? The fact that when you go as a single or a couple and you're expected to give a certain amount, it's not easy for everyone to give a particular amount that's socially acceptable. What is your take on that?
So, two angles. First of all, when you're coming from an English-speaking country and you've always given a gift, it seems like in bad taste almost to give money or to ask for the people are asking for money. And I think we just need to understand that there's a cultural shift. Like, that is the culture in Israel. It's not considered in bad taste in Israel. That's just considered normal in Israel. So that's just one angle. The second is, I don't believe that people need to feel pressured to have to give money or to have to give a certain amount. If you can and you want to, fantastic. But I do not believe in that whole, like, oh, if I can't give, whatever they're expecting, that I shouldn't even go to the wedding. If I feel close to someone, or if someone feels close to me, I would expect them to come to my kid's wedding. And if they can't give a gift or don't want to give a gift or they don't want to give money, that is 100% fine. That will not bother my friendship. Unfortunately, not everyone in Israel feels that way. There's definitely a lot of pressure, especially sometimes in the workplace. You're invited to a colleague's wedding and you're expected to all chip in. And it's like, you know what? I don't value spending my money on that because I don't actually want to go to the wedding, never mind want to give them money. So there's definitely a lot of conflicts that it brings up. And I think just to remember that that is the culture here and it is the norm. And I wish that more people had the attitude of, okay, we're not in this for gifts. We're in this because the couple want to get married. If I want to spend a certain amount on my kid's wedding, so be it. It has nothing to do with the gifts. But as I said, not every Israeli feels the same way I do.
Right. I know that. I know that. So we could carry on talking for a long time here. There's so much to say. So let's just end off. If you can share, number one, with people how they can get hold of you, what's the best way to reach you? And number two, one or two tips that you'd like to end that we can, end on a positive note to manage our finances in a responsible way.
Sure. So I can be reached at rifkalebowitz.com. Rifka's with an F. And to remember that, it's F for finance.
Right, that's
rifkalebowitz.com.
good. And actually, people will be able to see your name on the screen as well. It will show up in the recording.
Right, exactly. So rifkalebowitz.com. And two tips. First of all, we can make it in Israel. We can do well in Israel. There's lots of opportunities. It might take hard work, but we can get there. And the second is up your financial awareness. Wherever you are now, whatever your starting point is today, up your financial awareness. It will only do you good.
Wow, amazing. I totally agree with that. And actually, if you want to just give a plug here, you also wrote a book. You're an author of a book on financial information. Do you want to just give a quick plug for that?
Sure, I didn't know you were going to ask that, but I happen to have the book sitting right here. I don't know
Yeah,
if
hold
you
it a
can
bit
see.
back that we can see it.
Oh,
Hold it against you. Hold it against you.
me. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
there we go.
Sorry
Yeah.
about that. Okay, so yes, I wrote a book called Smarter Israeli Banking, and it just explains the banking system. I saw when I left the bank, or actually when I was working at the bank, that nobody explains how the banking system works, not to Israelis or to English speakers. And I saw people making major mistakes, canceling checks and then getting sued and all sorts of things happening. I was like, someone needs to tell them how Israeli banking works. Nobody did. I wrote a book
Right, and you
on
did,
Israeli banking.
absolutely. You saw a gap for it, incredible. And you're seeing a gap for so many things, which is awesome. So Rifka Lebowitz with an F for finance. I love it. I never thought of that actually, but that is an amazing way of people remembering how to spell your name. It's been amazing and wonderful to have you as my spotlight on the Monday Motivation Spotlight. We've collaborated before. I'm sure we'll collaborate in the future. We've presented at different events together as well. So thank you so much for sharing with our viewers, for sharing who you are, what you are. Go contact Rifka. She's amazing. If you need any assistance, join her group, read her book. And I thank you for listening to another episode of the Monday Motivation Spotlight podcast. I'm Lesley Kaplan. Thank you for joining us, and of course to our sponsors, Egan & Cohen Insurance, as well as to Lali's Flower Boutique in Jerusalem. So every week, spotlighting amazing people making a difference in Israel. We will see you next week on the Monday Motivation Spotlight. Bye-bye.